Can you not block the entrance? This isn't a bus station." The words hit first sharp, dismissive, loud enough for customers to hear. The young white employee didn't even look up from folding a blazer. His tone carried the practiced boredom of someone used to turning people away. The store gleamed under soft, diffused lighting, chrome racks lined with designer menswear, suede benches untouched, jazz humming from ceiling speakers. Polished concrete reflected every step like glass. Two shoppers paused near a display table. One woman gently pulled her boyfriend's arm and whispered. Another associate froze by the fitting room, pretending to rearrange hangers. He hadn't even spoken yet. The man standing in the doorway wore a charcoal wool coat, tailored so precisely it whispered money without saying it. Dark slacks, brushed leather Oxfords, watch peeking beneath a crisp cuff. He stood still, utterly calm. Silent, unreadable. And something about that stillness, it didn't sit right with the room. The employee finally glanced up, eyes scanned. Skin tone first, paused, judged. Then came the second jab, sharper, this time with a fake laugh. "Look, if you're lost, the food court downstairs. This store's for real buyers. If you believe everyone deserves respect, no matter how they look or what they're wearing, type respect in the comments right now." The man didn't blink. He stepped forward, pulled something from his coat. Not a wallet. Not a card. A sleek black fob, no logo. He tapped it once against a panel behind the counter. Beep. The lights over the back office flicked on. The employee frowned. What are you doing?" He didn't answer. He walked past the stunned associate, through the side door, and into the staff hallway. The store manager, a tall man with a deep part in his hair, peeked out of the break room, eyes going wide. "Sir," the manager gasped. "We weren't expecting you." By now, the first employee had rushed to follow. "Wait, who the hell is he?" The manager turned pale, swallowed hard. "That's Mr. Rhodes." The floor dropped out of the moment. Every wrinkle of arrogance drained from the associate's face. Customers looked on, quiet now, sensing the change in pressure. The man who had been spoken down to didn't raise his voice, didn't even look back. He simply turned his head halfway. His voice was smooth, cold, and final. "I built this store from scratch, and I know what it looks like when someone doesn't belong." He walked into his private office. The door hissed shut behind him. It was quiet behind the glass. Not cold, but controlled. Polished oak desk. A framed abstract painting. One small photo of a young black boy beside a woman in scrubs, both smiling from a modest apartment kitchen. A space designed not to flaunt wealth, but to remind him where it all started. Darius. Rhodes loosened his collar and sat down slowly. The phone on his desk buzzed once, then again. He didn't answer. Let them sweat. Outside, the associate who insulted him stood frozen behind the counter, pale as linen. The store manager, Edward, kept darting his eyes between the door and the stunned staff. How was I supposed to know who he was? The young man whispered. "You weren't supposed to assume who he wasn't," Edward replied, his voice clipped. "That's the difference." 12 years earlier, Darius sat behind the register at a second-hand men's boutique in Atlanta. At 21, he could press a shirt in 30 seconds, spot an off-brand Italian loafer in 2 steps, and knew how to pair a silk, pocket square with corduroy and still make it sing. But customers rarely asked his opinion, not with the way he looked. "They think I'm security," he told his mom once after a long shift. Or worse, just a guy who wandered in. But that never stopped him from learning. After hours, he took online courses in fashion merchandising and design logistics. He watched buyers operate like sharks at runway previews and studied margins like his life depended on it, because it did. At 25, he opened a pop-up shop in a worn-down part of Midtown. 1 rack, 2 mannequins. and a belief that luxury wasn't about logos, it was about story, and his story was undeniable. Back in the present, Edward gently knocked once, then stepped into the office. "Sir, I just wanted to say how sorry we are." He had no idea. Darius didn't raise his eyes. "You hire people who treat others like that?" "No, sir, he's new. Temp staff from the downtown location." New doesn't mean unaware. Ignorant doesn't mean innocent. The manager froze. Darius looked up finally, his voice level. "Tell me, how many times have we had complaints about him?" Edward hesitated. 2, maybe 3. Then he knew exactly what he was doing. Outside, the associate Tyler was pacing behind the register, sweat stained under his arms now. He kept glancing toward the hallway like it might open up and swallow him. Another worker offered him water. He waved it off. "This is bad, man," he whispered. I just thought he was like who?" The other guy asked. Tyler didn't answer. But the silence was loud. Meanwhile, Darius looked over the weekly performance report on his tablet. The store was underperforming barely. Meeting targets and customer experience scores were low. It wasn't just about the insult anymore. It was about a culture. A culture that judged too fast and listened too little. He tapped a few notes into the file, then stared out through the frosted glass. His reflection was faint, just like all the times people pretended he wasn't there. Except now, he owned the room they pretended to be in. As Edward left the office, he paused beside Tyler. "Mr. Rhodes will be handling this directly," he said quietly. Tyler swallowed. "Handling what?" Edward didn't answer, but the look said enough. The next morning, the security cameras had already been reviewed, twice. No audio, just the visual truth. Tyler rolling his eyes, stepping forward, pointing toward the door. Mr. Rhodes standing still, unreadable. And then the keycard swiped the moment everything flipped. By noon, it wasn't just employees whispering. Head office had called. Regional had called. So had corporate. PR. And even though no press had picked up the story, the air in the store felt heavier, like everyone was waiting for something that hadn't quite dropped yet. Tyler sat in the back office, arms crossed, a defensive slump in his shoulders. His usual cocky smirk had drained into a jittery silence. Every time someone walked past the frosted window, he stiffened. He hadn't been fired. Not yet. That was the worst part. Uncertainty had a way of making a person unravel more thoroughly than a punishment. He tapped his foot rapidly, bit his lip, whispered to no one. "I didn't even say anything that bad." Out on the floor, too long time. Employees Jordan and Layla pretended to fold scarves while murmuring low. "I heard he owns 6 stores," Jordan whispered, glancing toward the hallway. 7, and the factory in Milan, Layla replied. "But you wouldn't know it. He's always low-key." "Tyler's finished." Layla didn't say anything for a moment, then softly, "Good." Later that afternoon, a courier dropped off coffee and pastries with a simple note. "For the P.S. TEMDR." Nobody touched it at first. Too many eyes. Too much confusion. It wasn't guilt that hung in the air. It was exposure. Everyone had seen something, either in Tyler or in themselves. And that's what made it stick. Mid-shift, a mother and her son walked into the store. Black, well-dressed, quiet. Tyler wasn't on the floor, but everyone else felt the echo of yesterday. Felt it when the mother stepped forward with a question. When she asked about a gift for her husband's promotion. When her son, maybe 10, maybe 11, touched a pair of gold cufflinks on the counter. There was a pause. Then Jordan stepped forward, kind, clear, attentive. Explained the difference between brushed gold and polished. Let the boy try on a jacket too big for him. And when the sale was done, the mother smiled and said something simple. "Thank you. It's not always like this." Layla stood quietly nearby. She met the woman's eyes, nodded once, and whispered, "We're changing that." But not everyone was ready to change. Around 5 p.m., a sleek gray sedan pulled up outside. A man in a tight-fitting suit stepped out, sunglasses still on as he entered. Derek Fields, regional director. He had sharp shoes and a sharper attitude, one of those corporate enforcers who always looked like they were one meeting away from replacing you. He didn't speak to anyone, just walked straight into the office. Inside, Darius stood with his back to the door, staring out the tall window that overlooked the city skyline. "You should have called me directly," Derek said, shutting the door behind him. Darius didn't turn. "And said what?" "That one of your hires embarrassed the entire brand in front of the founder. You're emotional." Now Darius turned. "I'm strategic. You just can't tell the difference because I'm not shouting." Derek hesitated just for a second. It was a misunderstanding. "No," Darius replied, voice firm. "It was a pattern. I built this company so that anyone from any background could walk into my store and feel seen. And instead, I get treated like a trespasser." He stepped closer. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to fix it from the inside." Back on the floor, things had shifted. Tyler returned to the floor near closing, quiet, tense, awkward. More banter. No more posturing. But it wasn't just him who changed. The customers noticed too. A white couple walked in. The woman recognized Darius from a business podcast and whispered it to her partner. They looked around curious, reverent, slightly guilty. The ripple was real now. Later that night, Layla stayed behind to lock up. As she grabbed her coat, she noticed a small post-it stuck to the inside of the staff fridge. It wasn't signed. It wasn't loud. Just 5 words. "We see you. We stand." She didn't know who wrote it, but she smiled, folded it into her pocket like something valuable. That simple note on the fridge would become a quiet tradition passed between shifts, sometimes rewritten, sometimes reworded, but always there. A signal that silence didn't mean agreement, that someone always noticed, and someone always stood back. In his office, Darius sat alone again. The photo on his desk still smiled at him. The boy and the woman in the kitchen. He tapped a note into his phone. Impact doesn't come from shouting. It comes from being the reason someone else doesn't get ignored. Then he powered off the screen and let the quiet mean something. The email hit inboxes at 7:04 a.m. sharp. Subject: Store Conduct Policy Reminder. From Derek Fields, Regional Director. Tone: polite, professional. Poison. Lines like, "Ensure all guests are treated with consistent courtesy," and "personal relationships should never influence internal decisions," made it sound harmless, neutral. But everyone knew what it really meant. It was pushback. Polished, corporate, and surgery. By noon, the shift schedules had changed. Layla was moved from front register to stockroom, rotation, to help with seasonal organization. Jordan's request for overtime was under review. Tyler was still on payroll, still in uniform, still lurking like a bad echo. Darius watched it all from behind the tinted glass of his office. He said nothing, but he was documenting everything. Afternoon, he met with HR. The rep, a woman named Celine, entered with a tablet, a forced smile, and a file already open. "Just a quick review of employee climate and productivity," she said. "Routine." He let her talk, listened calmly. And then placed a folder on the table in front of her. Inside, customer satisfaction reports, racial bias complaints logged across 5 locations, screenshots of text threads from team leads discussing fitting, the brand image when screening applicants. Data didn't shout, but it couldn't be ignored either. Celine flipped through the pages slowly. Her voice faltered. "You compiled all this yourself?" Darius nodded once. years ago. I was just waiting for the right moment to use it. Meanwhile, the store had grown strangely tense. Customers noticed the mood, the smiles that didn't quite reach the eyes, the employee who kept watching the door like something bad might walk in again. One woman, after a quiet purchase, leaned toward the register and said softly to Layla, "I saw what happened online. You all handled it with so much grace. Thank you." Layla blinked. It wasn't public. The woman shrugged, smiling. Things like that always travel, whether they're posted or not. She handed over her card. Platinum. The next day, Darius sat across from Derek Fields in a meeting room upstairs. Wood panels. Clean glass. The illusion of openness. "You're disrupting team flow," Derek said bluntly. "I'm disrupting comfort," Darius replied. Derek scoffed. "You think this is about race?" "I think this is about power," Darius said. "And what people do to keep it, especially when they know they're losing it." He pulled out a tablet. Tapped the screen. Up came a real-time dashboard. Customer retention, employee turnover rates, sales by demographic segment. The story was undeniable. People don't leave brands, Darius said. They leave what brands allow. By the end of the week, HR had filed 2 official reviews, but Darius wasn't rattled. He'd spent a lifetime being overlooked. A few reports and warnings didn't scare him. He was playing the long game. That night, before closing, he called Layla into the office. "Have you ever thought about running this location one day?" he asked. She froze. "Me? You've got the instincts, the spine, the vision. But, I mean, they'd never." "They will," Darius said, "because I'm putting your name forward." She didn't cry, not yet, but she sat down slowly, like the weight of being seen had just hit her all at once. Outside, someone had replaced the note on the fridge again. Same style, same spot, only this time, it read, "We rise by watching, we rise by backing." Friday afternoon, overcast skies. Foot traffic is low. Inside the store, Layla adjusted a mannequin's collar while Jordan double-checked inventory levels. They were moving with more precision now, not fear, not paranoia, but something closer to focus. The kind that came from knowing people were watching and learning. Behind them, Tyler lingered near the register, scrolling his phone, ignoring a smudge on the glass counter he was supposed to clean an hour ago. He still hasn't apologized. Not really, and no one asked him to, because something else had shifted. He wasn't the center anymore. At 2:17 p.m., the front doors chimed open. A woman in a navy skirt suit stepped in, flanked by 2 assistants. No announcement, no PR fanfare. Just a sharp gaze and a notebook in hand. Heads turned. Jordan whispered, "That's Angela Kim, luxury buyer for the NBA draft red carpet team." Layla didn't react. She stepped forward, offered a warm smile, and greeted her like any other guest. Angela didn't say who she was. Didn't need to. She asked for something sleek, modern, but timeless. "We're dressing for a name that's about to matter." Layla didn't blink. "Let me show you what matters before it's famous." From the security feed, Darius watched it all. He didn't interfere, didn't step out. He watched Layla pull options tailored gray wool, a navy mandarin collar coat, cufflinks forged in Detroit steel. She didn't just describe items. She told stories. Gave meaning. Angela listened. Tried them on. Smiled. And said 4 simple words. "Send me the invoice." Later, in the office, Darius reviewed the live feed analytics. Average customer dwell time was up 14%. Return visits up 19% since Monday. He sent a quick note to corporate. "If you want a case study in culture shift, watch Store 03 this week." The ones who were silent are speaking now loudly with service and results. At closing, the team gathered for the nightly huddle. Layla led it. "Tomorrow's forecast says high traffic," she said confidently. "Let's prioritize clarity over chaos, and if anyone's not clear on what that means—" She paused, then glanced toward Tyler briefly, but pointed. "Ask for help or step aside." No one laughed, but Jordan gave a small nod, and Tyler didn't speak. He just walked to the back and began restocking belts. For the first time that week without being asked, Darius stayed late. The store was empty. Jazz. Low again. Lights dimmed. He walked the floor alone, fingertips brushing fabrics, straightening a tag here, adjusting a blazer sleeve there. The ritual of it soothed him. When he reached the window, he looked out at the city. The same city that once walked past him, that once saw only skin and not skill. He whispered to no one, "Let them keep talking. I'll keep building." Behind him, on the staff fridge, another note had been added in smaller writing beneath the last one. "We rise by backing, and we build by refusing to break. Monday, 9 a.m. sharp. Boardroom 6A, frosted glass, 8 leather chairs, coffee tray, untouched. Silence so clean you could hear the click of someone uncapping a pen across the table. Darius sat at the head of the long table, calm, posture perfect, tablet in front of him. Behind him, the skyline shimmered through the window like a quiet reminder. He had already made it further than any of them expected. Across from him sat Derek Fields, flanked by 2 HR reps and 1 senior executive with a clipped bob and cold eyes. No small talk. No greetings. Derek started first. "We're here to discuss growing concerns about your conduct, Mr. Rhodes." Darius didn't flinch. "Be specific." "Your decision to bypass protocol, initiate staffing changes, and insert personal judgment into corporate systems has raised accountability," Darius interrupted, voice soft. "The word you're reaching for is accountability." Celine, the HR rep from before, cleared her throat. "While we appreciate your passion, there's been discomfort among mid-level employees who feel scrutinized. And how many of them made black customers feel worse than being scrutinized?" Darius asked, not even blinking. The table stiffened. He tapped the tablet once. The screen behind him lit up. 6 images, 6 separate incident logs. One clip muted but visible of Tyler rolling his eyes, gesturing dismissively. "The moment it all started, I came into a store I built and was treated like a problem. Not because I acted out. Not because I broke policy. But because I didn't fit someone's idea of who belongs." The woman with the cold stare spoke for the first time. "We're not questioning your right to oversee your brand. We're questioning the optics of how you're handling it." Darius turned. "For whom?" Silence. He leaned forward. "I didn't embarrass this company. They did. I didn't shout. I didn't sue. I walked through my own doors, faced prejudice, and responded with structure, receipts, and restraint." He took a breath, then dropped the final line like a gavel. "And if that makes you uncomfortable, you're welcome to hand me your resignation." Across the table, Derek's mouth opened, then shut. No one moved. The city moved outside. Inside, everything was still. Then finally Celine cleared her throat. "Mr. Rhodes, we support reform. We just weren't ready for how fast it's happening." Darius smiled barely. "That's the thing about justice. It doesn't wait for readiness." Back downstairs, the store was running without him. Layla greeted guests. Jordan managed back inventory. Tyler stayed quiet but efficient. The team flowed like they knew someone was watching. Because someone always was. By late afternoon, a company-wide memo went out. New diversity protocols, training upgrades, anonymous, Complaint system added to internal apps. Darius didn't send it. He didn't need to. The boardroom had done the rest. At 6:12 p.m., Layla knocked on his office door. You okay? He looked up, tired but grounded. Yeah. She stepped in, hesitated, then said, They tried to bury you. He nodded once. Let them. I've always grown through the cracks. And on the fridge, another handwritten line had been added beneath the last. We build by refusing to break. And we rise by calling things what they are. It started with a single video. A customer, young, black, maybe in her 20s, had filmed her quiet walk through the store days ago. The morning after the incident, she'd captioned it, Walked into a luxury store. Thought I'd be followed. Instead, I got offered tea. Something's changing. Nothing flashy. No music. Just a 12-second clip, but it caught fire. By morning, the video had racked up over 1.3 million views on TikTok. Then it was on Twitter. Then Reddit. Then Instagram. The comments rolled in. WHERE is this store? Luxury without attitude. Finally, we need more owners like this. No one had tagged Darius. No one even knew who he was yet, but the store name was in the background. And people noticed. At 10:17 a.m., his phone buzzed. NBC News, interview request. Essence Magazine. Profile inquiry. GQ request for quote on leadership and fashion. He stood at his window again, watching a slow drizzle streak down the glass. Traffic crawling below. He didn't smile. He exhaled. Quietly. And then walked to his desk and picked up his phone. By noon, the store was full, not bursting, but buzzing. Guests weren't just shopping. They were looking at the staff, the layout, the tone. Darius stood quietly near the back, beside a row of suede jackets. He wasn't there to be seen, but people kept turning toward him anyway. A young man whispered to his friend, Yo, that's him. That's the owner. Another customer, white, older, approached him slowly. Excuse me, are you the one who runs this place? Darius nodded gently. Yes, sir. The man looked him over. Not judging, just realizing. My daughter sent me that video, he said. Told me it felt different here. I see it now. Then he offered his hand, and I appreciate it. Layla caught up with Darius near the counter after lunch. You're on 4 different fashion blogs, she said, holding up her phone. One called you the quiet architect of anti-discrimination retail. He raised an eyebrow. That's a mouthful, she grinned. So's the impact. By evening, a stylist from a Netflix production walked in, no appointment. Said she'd been meaning to check them out ever since that TikTok. 2 racks of items later, she dropped a corporate card with a logo embossed in silver. I want your team to dress half the cast, she said. We're shooting in Atlanta this fall. After closing, the team didn't rush to leave. They lingered, some on their phones, some replaying the video, some just being. Layla turned the lock on the door, leaned against it, and whispered, We're not just surviving anymore. Jordan nodded. We're being watched in a good way. And in the break room, that same fridge had a new addition. Not a note, a printed sticker, laminated, permanent. Bold black letters on white background. We see, we stand, we build. Below it, smaller print. Founded by Darius Rhodes, 100% black owned. Built for all. Darius stayed last again. He stepped into his office. Turned off the light, paused in the dark, and said softly, without ego, without need, Let them find me now. I never needed the spotlight, just space. 2 weeks later, the newsletter went out. Subject, Real change, real names. Sent to every employee, vendor, and partner in the company. It listed 3 major updates. A full review of hiring and promotion, practices across all locations, a zero-tolerance policy for racially biased behavior, employee or customer. The renaming of the flagship store. It was no longer just Store 03. It was now the Rhodes Room. The reactions were instant and mixed. On the floor, employees clapped when the news broke. Across town, a regional manager typed a passive-aggressive email to corporate about overcorrection. On social media, customers flooded the comments with support. About time we saw names like his above the door. Black excellence isn't a trend. It's leadership. Take notes. Every other luxury brand. Inside the newly renamed store, the culture kept shifting. Staff were sharper, more focused, but also freer. Jordan started wearing pins from black-owned designers on his name badge. Layla began mentoring one of the new hires, a soft-spoken girl named Aisha who'd never worked retail before but had an eye for fabric like a trained stylist. And Tyler? Tyler showed up on time, asked questions, watched more than he talked. He still hadn't said sorry outright, but something in his posture said he knew he had a long way to go. Sometimes growth looks like silence. 2. Upstairs, Darius met with the company's VP of branding. "You've lit a fire we weren't ready for," she said, half amused, half exhausted. "PR wants to run a full campaign around your story." Darius raised an eyebrow. "So now I'm the face?" She chuckled. "You are the story." "I'm not interested in being a mascot," he said. "If we're going to talk, it better lead to policy, not posters." She nodded slowly, noted, then leaned in. "But let's be clear. What have you done here?" "It's already a case study, internally, and now externally." By month's end, 5 other stores had installed staff-led diversity councils. 2 had followed Darius's silent notes on the fridge, modeled turning break rooms into quiet spaces of solidarity. HR received fewer complaints. Not because less happened, but because the culture itself was evolving. People were learning to interrupt injustice before it escalated, because they saw what happened when someone finally did. Layla stood in front of a new hire orientation group. One Friday. "There's a difference," she said, "between not being racist and being anti-racist. And in this store, silence doesn't count as neutral. If you see something, you act." She pointed to the laminated sticker on the fridge. "That's not a decoration. That's a declaration." Darius watched her from the doorway, quietly proud. He didn't need to lead every meeting anymore. The culture was doing the heavy lifting now. Later that evening, while reviewing quarterly numbers, he saw something that made him pause. Customer diversity had increased across all locations. And not just that. Return rates were down. Spending per visit was up. But the biggest change? Employee retention was the highest it had ever been. People didn't just stay. They belonged. He took out his phone, texted, "Layla, next step, mentorship program. Paid. Let's start with 5 mentees. All from overlooked zip codes." She replied 2 minutes later, already drafting the plan. And on the fridge one more note. This time, not handwritten. Typed, framed. Placed above the original. "When you shift the culture, you shift the future." The headline hit like a sucker punch. Luxury brand CEO accused of favoritism in staff. Promotions insiders claim hostile work culture. Byline, anonymous source. Published on a mid-tier business blog. But it spread like oil on flame. Reddit threads. Twitter thinks pieces. YouTube hot takes. The article hinted at everything: internal bias, unfair advancement, identity politics infecting corporate spaces. No names, no proof. Just a suggestion, but the suggestion was enough. Within hours, Darius's inbox filled with media inquiries. His assistant buzzed the office intercom. Corporate PR is panicking. They want a statement yesterday. He stood at the window again. This time no music, no rain. Just city noise beneath the glass. He didn't pace, didn't curse. He sat down, logged in, and opened the article again. Then opened the staff files. One by one. Every promotion. Every pay raise. Every performance report. Receipts. At 2:43 p.m., he walked into the staff huddle. The room fell silent. Even Tyler stopped stalking. "I won't keep you long," Darius began, voice calm but ironclad. "Some of you may have seen the noise." A few nods. "You'll hear words like favoritism, bias, hostility. I want you to hear this directly from me." He paused. Then looked each of them in the eye. "I don't promote people because of where they're from. I promote them because of where they're going. A beat. And I never said this journey would be easy. But we're walking it together, and we're walking it out loud." Layla's eyes shimmered. Jordan folded his arms and nodded. Even Tyler, standing in the back, looked down, not in shame, but in understanding. Outside the huddle, backlash brewed. Corporate calls. Derek, the regional director, resurfaced like a ghost. "We'll need you to step down from public-facing duties until this settles," he said. Darius didn't argue. He just asked, "Who leaked it?" Derek blinked. "We don't know." "I do." He placed a printed email on the table. It was internal, dated, forwarded. With subtle wording, Derek's name was on the C key line. "You forgot I have eyes everywhere." The next morning, Darius released a public statement, not defensive, not angry, just deliberate. Accountability isn't always welcomed, but it is necessary. We will continue to build, not for applause, but for those who've never had a seat at the table. He included links, performance stats, retention data, promotion transparency. No theatrics. Just the truth. Something shifted again. The noise didn't vanish, but it lost momentum. The receipts outpaced the rumors. And more importantly, so did the people. Layla tweeted, "If excellence looks like favoritism to you, maybe you've never worked with someone who looks like me." It went viral. Customers returned in droves. People walked in, not just to shop, but to show support. A grandmother in pearls. A teenage boy in Jordans. A teacher from across town who brought her whole book club. One woman hugged Layla and said, "Don't let them dim what you built." Back upstairs, Darius leaned over his desk, exhausted. Not defeated, but tired in the way that only clarity brings. He wrote in his notebook, "You can smear the name, but you can't smear the proof." He closed the cover and let the silence rebuild. His center. In the fridge? No new note. Just the originals. Untouched. Because some truths don't need rewriting. They just need repeating. 2 months later. A warm spring morning, and the sidewalk outside the Rhodes room was lined with people. Not because of a sale, not because of a scandal, but because of a ceremony. Brass plaque gleamed beneath the sunlight near the front entrance. "This location is dedicated to those who were told they didn't belong, then proved they did." Founded by Darius Rhodes, 2025. A crowd had gathered. Quiet, respectful, dressed like they knew the significance. Not a red carpet, but something better. A long blue runner, soft, deep velvet. The kind that absorbs footsteps and holds history. Inside, the store had been redesigned. Same elegance, same modern lines, but now the portraits along the sidewall weren't faceless models. They were people. Employees. Leaders. Tailors. Mothers. Founders. And in the center, a blown-up photo of a boy in a worn-out Atlanta apartment kitchen standing next to a woman in scrubs, laughing with joy. Darius stood near the back. Not front and center, just present. Layla stood beside him, now officially the regional manager of all 7 stores. "Are you ready for this?" she asked. He exhaled. "As I'll ever be." "Speech time," she smiled. He shook his head. They already know what I'd say, but still he stepped forward. Outside, the crowd leaned in. Inside, cameras rolled. Darius stood near the plaque, one hand in his pocket, the other resting lightly on the wall. I didn't build this for recognition, he began. I built it because there were too many places where we weren't allowed to exist with dignity. A pause. I didn't raise my voice, I raised my standards. And I stood still until the world had no choice but to see me. Another pause. But this store? This space? He looked around at the staff. The crowd. The plaque. This is yours now. There was no roaring applause. Just silence. The kind that wraps around a room and says, something important happened here. Later that day, long after the guests had gone, a little girl, maybe 9 or 10, stood outside the display window. Brown skin, braided hair. Holding her mother's hand, she pointed at the wall inside, at the framed portrait of Darius beside the quote. Who's that? She asked. Her mother smiled. That's the man who made this store. The girl tilted her head. Can I do that? Someday? The mother kneeled down and whispered, You already can. Inside, Darius watched them through the glass. He didn't wave. He didn't need to. He just turned to the fridge one last time, peeled off the laminated notes gently, and replaced them with a single permanent etching, laser engraved on a brushed steel plate. We see, we stand, we build, and we never forget who we built IT for.